Okay, good evening. I'd like to call to order the May 11th, 2022 regular meeting of the Planning and Transportation Commission. And we're going to go to our resolution on hybrid meetings with Ms. Tanner.
I think do we take the roll first to have a quorum? And then, I can't remember what we used to do.
Okay,
Yeah,
want to call the roll?
Let's do that, and then we'll do the resolution after that.
Chair Lowy,
Present.
Vice Chair Suma,
Present.
Commissioner Chang,
Present.
Commissioner Hackman,
Present.
Commissioner Regdal,
Present.
Commissioner Ruparvar,
Present.
Commissioner Templeton.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you to members of the public who may be wanting to participate in this meeting. You can do so if you are here in the chamber. I don't think we have anyone in the chamber who will be participating today. If you'd like to give a speaker card to Ms. Medina Klasheva, she can help you to give public comment if there's items you want to give public comment on. Pursuant to AB 361, this commission meeting will be held as a hybrid meeting with the option to attend by teleconference and video or in person. And if you want to join online, you can go to https://zoom.us/join. You can enter meeting ID 916-4155-9499. Again, 916-4155-9499. And then you can join the Zoom meeting that way. Or if you want to use a phone, you can dial 1-669-900-6833. And again, enter the meeting ID 916-4155-9499. Also pursuant to AB 361, we have some planning and transportation commissioners who are joining us online via the Zoom platform. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This is the part of the meeting where we do oral communications where anyone from the public can speak on an issue that is not on the agenda. There is no one in chambers at this time. What about online speakers?
Yes, we have one raised hand from Carrie Yarkin.
Okay, go ahead.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening, Chairman Lowing and Commissioners. I want to bring to your attention something that I think was left out of the Castellea hearing, which I think is very important. I want to first of all just make sure you all know that the Planning Department is responsible for all permits and conformance of with all applicable code and regulations for all buildings in Palo Alto. So going back to the variance, the PTC voted on the Castellea project in 2020. At that time, the actual gross floor area was in question. So the city council hired DUDAC to verify what the square footage was in November of 2021. This was published in November 2021. So 5 months ago, the PTC had this information. It was public knowledge that there was a 47,300 square foot variance that Castellea was asking for their non-conforming existing buildings, which were 5 of them, to today's Castellea plan of one large building. The code requires that once you demolish a non-conforming building square footage, you can't just replace it. You need a variance. Are you, the Planning Commission, approving the planning staff's report where they're granting a variance? I'm not sure who, either the chief planner, the director of planning, city manager, or city attorney. Shouldn't Castellea have to follow code, just like every resident, developer, nonprofit that wants to tear down and replace an existing structure? Once Castellea tears down these 5 non-conforming buildings of square footage, they have to comply with current code. That's why we have zoning laws. That's why you are the Planning Commission, to rule on keeping this enforcement. It now seems as if the city, I guess the city planning department, but I'm not sure who is signing off, is giving Castellea an extra 47,300 square feet for their building. I think that you need to weigh in on this. It's your job. I hope you can deliberate about this variance. I think it was a mistake There were plenty of mistakes made with the Castellet application. I think this is one glaring one, and it gives so much extra land to Castellet for their new building. I don't think you really weighed in on it. I think you weighed in on all the cup, parts of the cup, but this should have been a separate kind of hearing or a meeting where you deliberated about the actual square footage. Thank you for your time.
Are there any other public speakers?
No, we don't have any raised hands online right now.
Okay, thank you to the one that we had, and we'll move on to agendas, changes, additions, or deletions, if there are any from staff or commissioners.
No changes from staff.
Don't see anything from commissioners. Okay, so we'll go to the city official report from Assistant Director Tanner.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Good to be with you all tonight. Just a few updates. Hopefully, you all, those who made it, had fun at the Mayfet Parade this past weekend. And we are looking forward to continuing to get out and make sure that we can continue to have in-person activities. And I know that's very much fun for all of us. I know myself included. We are, as you may know, experiencing a slight uptick in the county and the state in COVID transmission. So we're just asking people to be mindful and aware as you go out and whatever you're doing, whether it's wearing masks or just taking other precautions, testing often. As we know, the sub variants are very evasive and hard to detect at various times. But right now there haven't been any changes in city policy. And so we'll update you if there are any changes in our protocols here at the city of Palo Alto. I also am going to pass it over to Sylvia Starlack, who is going to, I think, reintroduce a staff person and make a few announcements. Ms. Starlack?
Thank you, Ms. Tanner. Good evening, commissioners. I'm Sylvia Starlack, the Transportation Planning Manager. And our Chief Transportation Official, Philip Kemi, couldn't be with us tonight, which means that I have the distinct honor to reintroduce to you Rafael Reyes, Senior Transportation Engineer, who is rejoining the city after a short intermission. He's here tonight, and I'm also here to announce that he will be the Office of Transportation's liaison to the Planning and Transportation Commission moving forward. So I just wanted to welcome Rafael back to the city. We're so excited to have him back. The other item I have is to announce that Bike Month is here. May is Bike Month. And Bike to Wherever Days is the whole month. We hope that you are biking as much as possible in May when the weather is lovely and it just feels great to bike in town. A couple of things I wanted to note are that our local volunteers are running 3 Energizer stations over 2 days, Friday, May 20th and Saturday, May 21st. And on Friday, May 20th, between 3:30 and 6:30 p.m., you have 2 choices. There's an Energizer station where you can pick up information, free swag, sometimes there's snacks. The first one is in downtown on City Hall Plaza facing Bryant Street. And the second on Friday, May 20th in that afternoon time is at the California Avenue Plaza at California Avenue and Park Boulevard, right there by the Caltrain station. On Saturday, May 21st, between 2 and 5 p.m., there'll be an Energizer station at Mitchell Park Library. So if you're out and about on your bike, running your errands, you can stop by one of those Energizer stations and pick up some fun items. I hear that there will be some iBike Palo Alto t-shirts available for that might be distributed. So get there early.
Thank you. And I wanted to ask if Mr. Reyes, if you want to just say something, because otherwise your face will not come up on Zoom and it'll be a somewhat interesting introduction. Do you want to just share a few words?
Sure. I wasn't really prepared, but thank you for the warm welcome back. I'm glad to be back with the city and looking forward to working with everyone, with all the commissioners and this commission, and looking forward to it. Thank you for the warm welcome.
Welcome back.
I can say he's definitely one of the favorite traffic engineers I've ever worked with. So we're glad to have you back for sure. With that ends the city official reports, and I'll give updates on upcoming meetings at the end of the agenda on the upcoming meeting item.
Okay, any questions of staff from the commissioners? Either transportation or, did I miss anybody? Okay. Then we will move on to our first action item, which is a review and recommendation to the Finance Committee and Council on a proposed 23 to 27 capital improvement plan and comprehensive plan compliance, also known as the CIPs, and of course, the comp plan. So that's the item. And I think Ms. Moitra, you have a presentation?
Yes, yes, I do. Just give me a brief second. I can share my screen.
Great. While she's bringing that up, I'll just let you know, you can see on your participant list, we have a number of participants. Array of city staff are here. So we have staff from the departments who are proposing the different capital improvement projects. And so as you may have questions, we may direct those to the appropriate department. Ms. Moitra, take it away.
Yes. Thank you, Rachel. Good evening, commissioners. I am Chitra Moitra, planner, long range planning. Tonight, we come before you requesting the review of the new CIPs which have been added to the 2023-27 budget book. You're along with the review of the new CIPs, you can also suggest any improvements or additions or any new CIPs which you think is missing from this year for your next year's to be added in the next year. So along with that, we will convey your suggestions and your recommendations to City Council and Finance Committee via the letter tonight. So every year, the city departments prepares a list of CIPs based on the citywide infrastructure need and as well as City Council's priorities. This year also, different departments have proposed 12 new CIPs, and planning department staff links each CIPs with the comprehensive plan element, a goal and a policy, and figures out the compliances with them, and also adds information on what type of board review is required for the CIP, as well as if any environmental review is required for the CIPs. This year, we have in our budget book 174 CIPs. These are a mixture of new and continuing CIPs. And as I mentioned before, there are 12 CIPs, new ones this year, and that approximately makes up 7% of the CIPs this year. And Commission would be focused on reviewing the new CIPs. And the remaining 162 CIPs in the book, it was reviewed by PTC in previous years. These are the list of the new CIPs which we have included this year. As you can see, some are related to improvements in the for the Palo Alto airport infrastructure, the Kaberli Community Center, and improvement of the fire training facility we have in the city. And the rest here we see are streetscape improvements as well as infrastructure improvements in different parts of the city. So these are the 12 new CIPs you see here. This year, of the 12 new CIPs, we find that 6 of these new CIPs align with the environmental natural environment element of the comp plan, 3 with the community services element, 2 with land use element, and 1 with safety element. This pie graph shows the distribution of all CIPs in the budget book. And as we can see that majority, about 48% of the CIPs are aligned with the natural environment element, and 30% with the community services element, and so on. So this extensive analysis of the individual CIPs with the comprehensive plan programs and policies shows that all the CIPs, all 12 of them, are consistent with the comp plan, and hence staff requests PTC this recommendation to find all the CIPs consistent with the comp plan and forward this recommendation to the City Council and the Finance Committee. As next steps, both the City Council and Finance Committee is reviewing this May and June, the budgets, and the final budget hearing would be on June 21st, when the council would adopt the budget. So this is my short presentation, and if staff and myself, we are here, city staff and myself are here, and if you have any questions on any CIPs, we are here to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we'll see if there's any public comment in this issue. There's, again, no one in chambers.
Yeah, and no raised hands online.
Okay, we'll just give it another few seconds to see if anybody was planning on speaking on this item.
If anybody is attending online, if you want to raise your hand to speak, now is the time.
Okay. I just wanted to reference one of the parts that Ms. Cheater spoke to, which we saw on packet page 9, so that we can, if we choose to, suggest improvements in economy or efficiency, which might be affected in various ways, but we certainly don't have to. So just want to know that, just want to underscore that is an option if we chose to. And I think just procedurally, it would be helpful if we just went through each one and all commented on the same one at the same time, or if you like, we can, for example, group the ones about fire. So if that's all right, then we would start on page 10 with the airport ones, and we'll just open it up to commission comments. I see Commissioner Reckdahl down in Alabama is calling in tonight, so
Howdy.
go ahead.
I just had a general question, applies to all of them. The environmental review column, I'm looking at the pullouts that was in the staff report. And some of them say they're exempt, and some of them say that they will be, and others say that they will need a CEQA, and some will say they may. Can staff kind of give a quick summary of why they would and why they wouldn't?
Yeah, I had that same question, actually.
Okay, great minds think alike, yeah.
I guess.
So for those which are exempt, those are under CEQA, those are like basic minor repair and maintenance of the existing facilities. So that's why they are exempt, and some are the bigger projects which actually need an EIR and in CEQA CEQA review. There are some like that, and based on the and then again, some actually do not need the CEQA review at all. If this is like something like vehicle upgrade or things like that. So these are the categories.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Who wants to open the comments on fire? Oh, I see. Sorry, Commissioner Chang had her light on.
Thank you.
Airport, sorry.
So I had first a general question. How do things advance to this stage where they're added to the budget? So is it from direction from City Council, which I think is the case for some of these items, or is it because of a different planning effort by staff or by priorities in the comp plan? I'm just wondering, just for context, what's the process that then says these 12 are for this year? How do they get here?
I will let Paul speak to that. Paul.
Good evening, commissioners. Paul Harper with the Office of Management and Budget. So we have an annual budget process where departments bring forward projects that they would like to include in the upcoming 5-year capital improvement plan. And typically, it goes through a review process of, is it a necessary project? Does it meet sort of the criteria that we have where it's over $50,000? It's for an asset that the city would be adding. And then essentially it gets reviewed by a number of department directors and the budget office and the city manager's office to determine which projects are ultimately put into the 5-year plan. It's also a little bit, it depends on, funding, and if there is funding within the particular funds where each project is added each year. It's mainly a restriction in the general capital improvement fund or the Fund 471 fund, because that's restrained by essentially money coming in from the general fund, money coming in from TOT tax revenues. And so over the past couple of years, those have been very constrained due to impacts from the pandemic. But yeah, that's essentially, it's a process that we go through every year in order to determine which projects move forward as part of the budget every year.
Okay, airports, Commissioner Heckman.
Thank you. Let me actually start with a kind of a general observation from the end of the staff report, and incidentally, I really appreciate how succinct and clear the staff report was to walk us through these 12 new CIPs. It made it very easy to work through the list. But I noticed at the end, we have, I think it's 174 CIPs with the new 12. And incidentally, Ms. Moitra can correct me. I think earlier this year, when we were having our annual review of the CIPs, we had 9 completed. So if I'm remembering that number right, so we've completed 9, we've got 12 new ones. So I'm always concerned when I see this number 174 ongoing programs that staff throughout our departments have to monitor and advance. And so I'm pleased that we're not growing that number too fast. But the thing that caught my eye, of course, we're here as planning commissioners, planning and transportation commissioners, is when I looked at the breakdown of the 174 programs, only 28 of the 174 are categorized as primarily land use, which is 15, or transportation, which is 13. So that's 28 out of 174, which is, I don't know, 20%. Not a very high number. Now maybe that's, and so I was just curious about that. Because if, in my work, I talk to council members a lot, and if you ask a council member how much of the work that comes before them is land use, they'll routinely say it's more than 50%. Some of them say a lot more. So I would have thought a lot of our policies would be land use policies. Now maybe it's a matter of semantics, because we've got 84 in the natural, what do we call it? Natural environment, right? And that's, I would suggest that's often a subset of land use, maybe a more particularized description. But I just thought that was interesting, that the way these CIPs have developed, we have this, I'm not going to say overemphasis, but numerically significant proportion that's focused on the natural environment compared to all the other needs of the city. And so I'm just putting that observation out there for what it's worth. But I do think in developing programs as we go forward, in this process that Mr. Harper just described, we really have to kind of step back and think about where the holes are. And maybe right now there aren't so many holes in our natural environment, our programs for natural environment. And maybe we need to think about where there are holes and focus to the extent we can on those items. So that's my general comment. Specifically on the airport items, I just had a question about the funding. Items 1, 2, and 3 all provide for the same funding, 90% from an FAA grant and 10% match from the Airport Enterprise Fund. And my question to staff was, are these secured funds that we have received, or are these future funds that we've been promised, or future funds that we're just hoping we get?
Andy Swanson, airport manager, Department of Public Works, and the funds are part of our. It's a 5-year plan, so the funds are applied for on the year for the grant. It's part of a grant cycle with the FAA. That's the 90% of the funds. The 10% match comes from the Airport Enterprise Fund. And so it's planned out through our ACIP, which is the Airport Capital Improvement Plan with the FAA, and then our CIP plan with the city. And so the funding comes in on the year. It's very competitive and prioritized with the FAA. So it's a let's say long process, but it doesn't always happen on the year. It sometimes gets moved, but I hope that answers your question.
If, Mr. Chair, if I could just follow up. Thank you for explaining the process. What's our level of comfort that in this, in the 5 years that we're budgeting for, that we'll be able to go through those processes and get the funds we need to do the work in these 3 airport categories?
Pretty high level of confidence. Just in the past little over 4 years, the projects we've done, there's been about 43 million in projects at the airport. Just to kind of update everyone, the airport was transferred back a little over 7 years ago from the county. All the work we've been doing at the airport is really just like, I think one of the best examples is the road going into the airport and the need to rehabilitate it. And that's pretty much what we've been doing since we transferred the airport back, and have been, I'd say, very successful and competitive with the other airports in obtaining that money.
All right, thank you. And then one more question on item 3, which is the airport parking lot electric vehicle charger installation. The description, it was a little unclear whether we're in the design phase or we've got the design and this is the installation phase. Could somebody clarify that for me?
Yes, Andy Swanson again, and I'd be glad to. I would like to have been further along in that project, but again, with the match money and the small enterprise fund, the airport's enterprise fund, it's what we just have to go as quick as we can, and that's what we had available. So it would be design only in that portion of it. All right, thank you.
I had a piggyback comment that I wanted to ask you as well, since you're up, and mine was sort of like, the FAA is being very nice and generous to us. Why are they so enthusiastic about our airport? Or is that we're enthusiastic about our airport?
Well, it's
a serious question. Like, why are we so important relative to FAA being interested in funding this?
Well, I think we're a very busy general aviation airport. It plays a role in the national transportation system. And so we actually rank very high. And that's why we're very competitive, I think, with the other airports. Of course, not the larger airports in the Bay Area, but the other general aviation airports. As of now, we are the busiest general aviation airport in the Bay Area.
Okay, that's exactly the kind of data that I wanted to hear about. Thanks. Commissioner Chang?
Thank you. So I had a additional piggyback clarification question on what Commissioner Heckman was asking about. So I took all of these items and then looked at what the budget was for them in the big binder that we were given. And so, for example, for the first item, the airport zero emission vehicle fleet replacement program, it looked like that was a $350,000 one-time expenditure. Is that $350,000 the total amount of the project before the FAA contribution or after?
That's the total project.
And so then the 90%, presumably then if we get the grant, then Palo Alto is only paying $35,000 out of the $350,000, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And then in line with kind of Commissioner or Chair Lowing's question, or was it? Sorry, I think it was actually Commissioner Heckman who was talking about it. for item number 3, where we're in the planning phase for the EV chargers, is there any way to accelerate that so that we just have at least one charger actually installed? Because the number of like EVs has increased so much very recently, even because of the war and gas prices. So I was just wondering how much flexibility is there in this, especially since we were asked to think about things that maybe that should be added.
No, it's an excellent question. And if there was a way to do that, we are going to look at that. Right now, that was, what we could do with our budget. And there are some other FAA programs we're looking into to see if there was a way to at least accelerate that. Possibly, coming back at mid-year if monies were available. But at this time, that's where we're at with that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Rectal?
Yeah, I had a question. In the packet, it said up to 90% could be paid. Is that typical that it's 90? Or is it typical that it's lower? What would be a typical reimbursement?
Yeah, it does change from time to time. It has in the past, and it's actually in the authorization bill. So the current bill, it is 90%. So that's what it is. It's been 95 years ago. Now it's at 90. At one point it was at 100% here just a few years ago, but that was due to the COVID. And there was a 2-year time that it was actually at 100%, but that's passed now. So to answer your question, yes, 90%.
Okay, I mean, some of these numbers are pretty big, but when we're only paying 10%, it makes it much more palatable. But where does the 10% come from? The airport fund, do we fund that through the general fund, or where does it get the money?
No, it comes from the Airport Enterprise Fund. So it's generated from the airport through the users, fuel tax, and all the revenues generated from the airport. No general fund dollars are used.
Very good, thank you. That's all.
Any other commissioners on this item? Commissioner Suma, Vice Chair Suma?
Thank you, and thank you to staff, everyone who's here tonight for taking the time to answer our questions. And thank you to my colleagues who asked really good questions. I don't think I have any more questions at this time about the airport, but I'll just mention that the projects seem to be in keeping with our goals in the comp plan for the airport. And that's it.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else? Okay, I think we can move on to the next item, which is Coverly Community Center redevelopment. Who wants in on that one? Commissioner Heckman?
I just wanted to say I was really excited to see this as a CIP. All 3 of my kids went through preschool family at Coverly. I'm pretty sure I lost my wedding ring camping out overnight to sign my kids up for summer camp. For those of you who remember when we used to have to do that, I think it's a jewel in our city, and anything we can do to bring more vitality and more use and more community to it, I just think is a win. So I'm really happy that we get to recommend that this be a new program.
Vice Chair Suma, your light on.
Thank you. Yes, I agree that Coverly is a jewel in our community. Although we've had so many exercises, I don't know how many, maybe staff could remind me, of design charrettes and things of that nature for Coverly. And they always kind of end up just being put on the shelf because we don't have clear understanding of how the PAUSD and what their needs are going to be, and how our 8 acres of the site, which I don't even know if those are contiguous, to be honest, but I know they're very irregular, the shape, how that all interacts, and is, until we know what the school is going to do, it's kind of hard for us to plan Cubberley. But I was just wondering if staff could comment on that and how this study would be different than previous studies, perhaps.
I think I saw our community services. Oh, there she is. Ms. O'Kane, why don't you address that?
Sure. Good evening, commissioners. I'm Kristen O'Kane with Community Services Department. So you're right, there have been numerous versions of a master plan for Cubberley. The most recent being in, I believe it was adopted in 2019. So since that time, the school district has changed its sort of vision for their portion of the site, which is contiguous to the city's portion. So the city owns 8 acres and the school district owns 27. We're still in conversations with them though about potentially doing some sort of land swap or purchase from the school district by the city of some additional acreage there. And since there is a change in sort of the school district's plan for the site and how much acreage the city might have, we would need to do a new study. However, there was a lot of great information that came out of the last Cubberley master plan, and I think we could absolutely build off of that master plan and use a lot of the information there to inform the next step. So I don't think it's a complete waste. Definitely will head us in the right direction and help inform our next step.
And is it being planned for a little bit later in the cycle, as I recall?
It is. And
To allow for some of the issues to be resolved?
Right. A lot of that has to just do with staffing bandwidth. So the Community Services Department has a lot of other initiatives that we're looking at right now, a skate park, potential new gym, and we just don't have the staffing to take on another large project at the time.
Okay, and I certainly don't think it's a wasted effort at all. I was just curious about the timing. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Chang?
I had a related question, which was when we, for the last cycle, the last plan that you said was, that Ms. O'Kane said was adopted in 2019, she believes. Was that planning process also funded by the CIP?
It was. So there was a Cubberley Master Plan CIP that funded that, and also the school district funded half of it. So it was a cost share between the school district and the city.
Got it. And so this one, we would be embarking on our own then, separate from the school? And then one of the questions I had related to that is, in terms of scale, or let's say dollar amount, how big is this planning effort with the 314,000 that's planned for in the next 5-year cycle compared to the last one? I'm just trying to get a sense of how much work we'll be doing relative to the last planning effort.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I don't think we have an answer right now. It hasn't really been scoped. I will admit that this item in the budget is sort of a placeholder for that work. And once we have a better idea of how much acreage we're working with and sort of what our scope for the site is, we'll have a better idea of the cost and what it will take to complete that work.
Okay, thanks. Do you know how much we budgeted for the last one? Or how much we spent?
Yes, it was, I believe, 560,000, which was again split with the school district.
Okay, thanks. That's just helpful to set sort of an order of magnitude context. Thanks, I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Rupavar?
Thank you. And this is a question for Ms. O'Kane. Were we, and correct me if I'm misremembering, but were we thinking about putting workforce housing near Cubberley, and there's still discussions around that? It was a while ago where we discussed it. I want to say it was over a year ago.
Right. So there was a discussion of housing on the site. The workforce piece was a conversation with the school district and possibility of having teacher housing on the school district's property. The housing that was planned, or not planned, the housing that was proposed for the city's site was not for workforce. It was just regular housing.
Are those discussions still, is that still an option or is that
At
off
this
the
point, I
table?
think anything could be an option. I know that for the school district, I believe it's off the table. I can't really speak for them, but for the last I heard, that was their decision. For the city, you know, or we haven't made a decision, so.
Yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
Commissioner Rectal?
Yeah, when I saw this on the list, I had mixed feelings. And it's something that we really need to do, but we've had so many disappointments. And Kristen probably has PTSD over the last version, but I think it's something we have to do. It makes me feel better that it's out at fiscal year 26. That'll give some time to figure out whether we want to do the land swap and other things. So if it was next year, I think it would be a little premature, but I think where it's placed, I think it's appropriate.
Other commissioners? No other comments? Okay. Then let's move on to the next one, which is the fire training facility replacement. And it is one item number 5. Commissioner Chang?
Would it be okay if I just asked one more big picture question right now?
Of course.
So I was a little slow on the uptake here. I wanted to follow up on a comment that Commissioner Heckman made about I think he was saying something about this coming to us earlier in the year. I do know that Ms. Moicher was here earlier in the year, but that wasn't for the CIP, correct? That was for general comp plan programs, not necessarily capital improvement.
Yes,
programs.
yes, you are right. That was
Okay.
for comp plan program implementation, and this is for CIPs. Totally two different issues.
So that's, I wanted to mention that because I was a little confused too. And so then when Commissioner Heckman mentioned 9 items complete, it's actually a completely different bucket of programs rather than capital improvement projects,
Yes,
correct?
yes.
Okay. And so then I also wanted to verify with you that the reason why we're seeing this particular distribution in the chart on packet page 14, where most of where the largest proportion of the projects are natural environment element, that's because of the nature of a capital improvement project. It's not
Yes.
necessarily where the city's spending all of its time, but because capital improvement projects are of a particular nature, that's why they all tend to be in this natural environment element.
Yes, and on top of that, I should say the scope of the natural environment element, it looks over air quality, water resources, any kind of infrastructure development is included in that, a lot of it. So that's why you see such a huge number of CIPs aligning with the natural environment element.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to clear up the confusion in my own mind and kind of make sure that we're all on the same page. Thanks.
Commissioner Rectal?
Yeah, I had a question about the current fire training facility. It's on Stanford land. Do we pay rent for that, or how's that arranged right now?
There's the chief. Go ahead.
So we use that facility as part of the contract that we have with Stanford. We also occupy that fire station on Sarin campus. And that's how we occupy. We don't rent it. It's just part of the agreement that it's on the property and we have access to it. So that specifically is not separate from the agreement. However, it's brought on here because in the most recent contract with Stanford, there's no guarantee, or it's in the contract that Stanford is responsible for replacing, rebuilding, or maintaining that training facility. So if at some point, right now there's no plan to, but if at some point they relocate the fire station to another area on campus, there's no obligation or expectation that they would include a training center for the Palo Alto Fire Department.
And how does that work? We rent that space, or they give this space to us in exchange for services, or?
No, it's not necessarily a rent. It's just, it's part of the agreement that we occupy that fire station to provide fire and EMS services on campus. And so all the facilities on that, so it was partial fire and part of the Department of Public Safety. The Department of Public Safety on Stanford relocated to a new building. So right now, fire is the only one that occupies that building. But the prior to Palo Alto Fire's agreement, that training center was for the Stanford Fire Department.
Okay. And is there any desire to rebuild it right now at the same location?
Well, a new facility would be desirable in any location, but right now, when we did the most recent agreement, it was just for services, and knowing that, you know, the condition of that building and not knowing the future of, you know, whether the fire station will stay on that location and where it will end up, Stanford representatives did not want to include that building in the agreement.
Okay. And so we want to have this training facility for our own purposes.
Absolutely. You know, it's vital that the fire department or the firefighters here in Palo Alto have a training facility to maintain their skills. It's in all the departments in the county, in several counties. They do have a training center at one of their fire stations. For example, the fires in Mountain View, they have one at Station 4. Sunnyvale has one that actually it's on Station 2. Milpitas is at Station 1. San Jose is currently rebuilding a new fire training center in their city. So every agency in the county has their own training facility, and ours is on Stanford campus, and that building is owned by Stanford. And it has not been maintained, updated, and there are components of it that we just can't operate on because of safety issues.
Oh, but we still use parts of it.
We still use parts of it. The latest thing we did, we purchased I guess the best way to explain it is a Connex box type module that we can use for some fire training, search and rescue. We can smoke it out. We can drag hose through it, put a ladder against it, but it is not the same. It doesn't provide the same level of training, where the current facility is a 4-story building that simulates a high rise. So we can practice connecting to a riser, taking hose up, rappelling off the top, doing ventilation operations, et cetera, forcible entry. Most of what we use it for right now has been modified by, you know, the training division of the fire department. But again, the building will not be maintained by Stanford University.
Okay. And is it feasible for us to share facilities with another city?
Feasible? Well, the issue we have right now, so when we typically do training, we have to take those units out of service because they're, you know, conducting in training. And if we get an emergency, they may have their hose all pulled off the fire engine, or their ladders, all this equipment is pulled off the engine. And for them to be available and respond to an emergency in 8 minutes or less is pretty unrealistic. So at the rate that we are right now, and the resources we have available, before we had more units and our deployment was different, but due to the reductions of budget and the way we had to modify our staffing model and our deployment model, it's not as easy for us to take a unit out of service to send to another agency. So the closest, let's say we partnered with Mountain View to send units all the way into Mountain View, 1 engine or 2 engine to do training would really draw down the resources available in the city. And we may, we likely would not be able to serve the city as efficiently with the units in the city, within the boundaries of Palo Alto.
Okay.
So ideally we would have one in the city, and that's why we would like to have a feasibility study, and we budgeted for that. And the current budget request, we asked for money to do a feasibility study in partnership with the Public Works Department to see if it is, feasible to have a training facility somewhere in the city. Where would it be located? How much would it cost? And the worth of it. So whether or not it will be in another city, I mean, we could have that conversation, but what we do is have to factor, how long our units will be outside of the city. How will they be available? Will the city that we're in provide resources in Palo Alto while that unit is out? There's a lot to consider for something like that.
Now, if we built this facility, would there be other parts of the city, whether it be utilities or police, that would want to use it for their own training?
Oh, I think the more we can, because our model collectively, when we respond to emergencies, we involve utilities, we involve PD, and other departments to complete and close down an incident. So if we were able to collaborate with other departments in the city to get a really effective training center, that would be ideal. I mean, I would really like to have, that'd be great if we had a center where, PD can use some of the components of it in training as well as fire. Again, don't know what that would look like. And I'm sure there are probably some models around the country somewhere where they have a collaborative occupancy like that. And so, I would definitely be open to having other departments, be able to utilize this training facility as well.
Okay, thank you. That's very useful.
Commissioner Chang.
Thank you. And thank you to Commissioner Rectal for asking most of the questions that I had. One kind of follow-on question I had is it correct that Stanford no longer has their own fire department then?
That is correct. Stanford had their own fire department, and I want to say it was in 1976 or 74 that we joined. We actually merged with the Stanford Fire Department, and their members became part of the Palo Alto Fire Department, and we had signed to an agreement to provide those services since then. And so since that contract, that's how we've been serving that community.
And then one more question. So is Palo Alto Fire the only group that is using the current training facility in any capacity then on Stanford's land?
Primarily, it is the Palo Alto Fire Department. Right now, we are partnered with a joint fire academy with Milpitas and County Fire. And the agreement is that we would share resources. And so we are using the training tower in Milpitas, and we're using the training tower it's in Campbell is where County Fire's training center is. And then in some cases, Palo Alto as well. So primarily is for Palo Alto, but on occasion, for example, in the academy, we will have other agencies utilize what we have to offer. And that was the real reasoning behind purchasing this module for training is for this fire academy that we have currently going on right now.
Okay, so then ultimately, as part of the study that this CIP is supposed to fund, we'd also be looking at, the analysis would also include where we might be able to share some of the costs for other municipalities that might want to use our facilities also for some purpose. Is that correct?
In this case, it could be. What we have done in the past for the fire academies, if we had sent our personnel to our recruits to other agencies, mostly with Sunnyvale, because our timing with hiring has lined up with them. And I believe with an exception of the academy we're currently in, the last 5 to 6 academies were with Sunnyvale. Again, they have a very robust training center, and they have the room for that. And we just can't accommodate, an academy of 15 people to do all the skills that are required for a Firefighter 1, California State Firefighter 1 certification. We aren't able to have the resources to provide that training. So, they have their own, again, and the whole purpose of this is to share resources in an academy. It's a collaborative effort. It's a joint fire academy. San Jose, which is a very large department, they're a metro-sized department, and County Fire is very large as well. They typically have their own, but they have also been open to doing joint fire academies. But primarily this would be for Palo Alto, but it'll also give us the opportunity to host, as we have in the past before the condition of the tower is unsuitable to provide a full academy.
Great. Thank you so much for giving us all this really useful information, Chief.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Heckman.
Thank you. So I first wanted to thank Commissioner Chang on the overview point for clearing up. I was confused, and now I'm not because you and staff walked me through it. So that was very very helpful to better focus me. On this item, the fire training facility replacement. So it's my view that police and fire are the two most important services that this city or any city provides to its citizens. And because those two departments are dealing with life and death issues, it's paramount that the personnel that staff those departments be adequately trained and ready to respond to anything that occurs. So with that mindset, I was really concerned when I read the description that's here in our staff packet at page 11 with that in mind. So, because here's what I see in this staff packet. We have a current training facility on Stanford, but it's unsafe to use. So to me, that tells me we're not using it because that would be unsafe for our firefighters. We got a temporary trailer to perform some of the training activities. That suggests to me that they're not able to do all the training activities. We're talking about a feasibility study to be done in 2024. And assuming that happens on time, it would be shocking if we build our replacement facility in even 3 years after that. So 2027, 5 years from now. So the concern I have is how do we keep our fire personnel adequately trained until we have that new facility? And do we need to condense this time frame that we're considering in this CIP to accelerate the process of getting a facility that will provide all of the training tools that the chief and his staff need to be adequately trained and ready to perform their emergency services in our city? So that's my question. Am I understanding the current situation with availability of training accurately from the report here?
Yes, if that question is directed towards me, I would absolutely agree. And we know that this is going to be a long-term project effort. And that's why we're trying to get it. You know, we've been talking about it for years. Matter of fact, when we finally came into a new agreement with Stanford and they said they weren't going to replace that building, we knew at that time that it was going to be an issue that we had to deal with and didn't know how quick we can get it done or even get what ideas did we have for it. So timing is an issue. How we're going to get the training done, we've had to be real creative on trying to fill gaps in our training to get the appropriate training done, especially when we do our own academy. We'll have to take our recruits elsewhere, but it's challenging to get our personnel that are working and to go to another city to provide that training. And and Milpitas is looking at replacing their building that they actually had built in the late 90s. They had a new building. Mountain View is about to replace theirs at Station 4. Sunnyvale is also looking at updating their training center. So having an effective training center it's paramount, as you said, to keep the skills up, to give them confidence to perform, be safe and effective on these emergencies.
And if I can just ask one more follow-up to the chief and the rest of the staff who's here. So what can if my fellow commissioners are of a similar mind, what can we do tonight in conveying our recommendation to the city council about the CIP program that would move it faster? How do we do that if that's what the commission wanted to do?
Paul Harper with the Office of Management and Budget. Thank you, Commissioner. So the budget was funded in 2024 for this project due to staff workload issues, and that's mainly in the Public Works Department. We just wanted to make sure that with all of the other capital projects that are currently planned, we wanted to make sure that they had adequate time to perform this study. And when we talked with staff, essentially, they did not think they would have time to put this into their work plan for 2023. So that's why it's in 2024.
I think to answer your question, perhaps more specifically, if the commission did want to send this with a recommendation to council that they try to advance this project sooner, that would probably be the extent of what the PTC can do to convey that message, either via the motion. And then what Chair Lowing does is sign a letter which is in your packet. And so that could either be, we could put the motion, for example, into that letter, and then that would be conveyed in that vehicle.
Yeah. Were you done?
Yeah, thank you.
That's what I was going to suggest, actually. And since it's so close, and I would just say that that's exactly the speech that I was going to give completely. I mean, it's complete. I mean, there's nothing more important than public safety. That's what government is for. And when we can't get our firemen trained, this reminds me of a CIP that we had in the Parks Commission years ago, and we kept putting off protection for wildfires in which park was that? One of the big parks. And I go, whoa, are we going to fix it after it burns down? So this has to be top priority. There's just no question about it. And this number of $70,000 is a de minimis number in the context of what we're trying to pull off. So I think if you're actually saying we can't do enough, we can't really do training, and you now do have staff to kind of work on this thing, then I think that would be an item that we could deal with tonight. So I don't have anything more to add, because that's what I was going to say. I mean, the only question is, if you get to when you get to the study, it is land use. So where you put that is important. And obviously that would be one of the considerations as you do the feasibility study. And how many acres you need is another thing, because it's used for that as opposed to something else. So there's that obvious trade-off in land use. I think Vice Chair Suma had some comments.
Sorry, I put a page in front of this page. Yeah, I share some of the concerns just voiced by my colleagues, and I actually think that perhaps we might recommend that the council consider allotting 70K or whatever it is a pretty small amount of money, and maybe it could be done quicker if more money was the analysis could be done quicker if a consultant was hired to help in this case. And because it is pretty concerning that we currently don't have adequate training, except in a very inconvenient way, kind of not locally. And then I was also going to ask, is it without getting into the details of this really complicated relationship regarding fire with Stanford and the city, is it actually the case that the relationship we have with them now, the deal we have with them now, would allow them to close this down in advance of an alternate being available?
Is that directed towards me?
I think so. You're in charge.
Yeah, so, as I said, we still use the facility to the best of our ability. We are able to do some training with it. We supplemented that building with the container that we purchased for the current academy that we have. The concern is that, it will not be maintained or rebuilt. And, as time goes on, the condition, it just gets older. And so we feel that we need to address having an updated facility that can provide for training that has changed since it's been built. I don't know when it's been built, but it had to be probably late 60s, early 70s, I would imagine. So again, we use it to the best of our ability. We modified it to do a lot of the training that we need to, but that's something that the firefighters have done, is to make modifications to it to address the training that we need to do, which is limited. So we will continue to use it to the best of our ability, and we're grateful that we had the funds to purchase this container to supplement the training that we do with the tower. So does it need to close down? I mean, it's not, we wouldn't use it at all if we felt that it was going to be, so dangerous that we're going to risk the safety of the firefighters to do training. We're not there yet. We're very cognizant of what we can and cannot do on that tower. And that's what we, again, that's how we determine the limitations on that building. So I just want to make that clear that we are still able to use it. We're cognizant of what we can and cannot do with it. But we know that that the opportunity to have an updated facility that reflects the training that has changed since it was built, so we don't have to, again, make up our own, modify our own, what are they called? Props to do the training. So, again, we do what we have to do. We know that we need the training. We know that training is paramount. But we feel that our firefighters deserve an updated training center that we can utilize to reflect all the disciplines in firefighting. And we also feel the citizens deserve, to have a well-trained fire department, which we are, but to have that all there. And I really like the idea of, multiple departments and how we could utilize the training center for multiple departments and what they can use. Because even on the training tower, we have our firefighters built a utility prop, because when we go on the scene of a fire, we have to shut down utilities, but not to the level that the utilities department does, because they could actually take the gas meter off and shut it down to the house. But what we do is we just turn the gas off and we shut the power down, because those are hazards on a fire. So again, if there was maybe a utility prop that the utility department would like to have on the building, so we can work collaboratively. And I'm confident, I'm not sure because I'm not a police officer, but I'm sure there may be some opportunities for PD to utilize it as well for some of their disciplines.
Thanks, Gio. I just wanted to add, my name is Holly Boyden, the Assistant Director for Public Works. So the fire department brought forward this project this past fiscal year, and it was included given their concern about the future of the fire tower. So I know they did an immediate kind of interim fix at mid-year and got this kind of training trailer, I'm going to call it. However, we did put this feasibility study in for fiscal year 24, given some staff workloads. Our priorities have been our infrastructure plan, and right now we are in the middle of the public safety building construction, which fire admin will occupy once it's done at the end of next year. And we are also kicking off our design for Fire Station 4, which has been on the books for a long time. So that has taken up a considerable amount of work time and staff workload to get to other projects that are relatively new. So we're pretty confident, and maybe we can do another check-in next mid-year or fiscal 24, that a feasibility study to start the process of looking for a site, because finding the site's not going to be easy, honestly. This is a 3+ story tower that we have to put on some city-owned land. So it's not going to be attractive, and it's not going to be easy to find a site. So it's something that we need to have, some thought put into and do a feasibility study in coordination with the fire department, so we can look at all the potential sites and constraints. So I just wanted to add in some additional information.
Okay, thank you.
Just for clarity, is that input, Ms. Boyd, that you don't think it can move up from where it is?
No, no, I don't think the Stanford site will be feasible, given that what I'm hearing from Gio and others is that Stanford University may have plans for that land in the future. So I don't think that site is going to be one of the front runners. So we're going to have to look within the city limits at one of our city-owned facilities. Land.
Right. No, I was asking if you think it would be appropriate to try to move this up with an extra $70,000 of CIP funding, or if you're saying that you couldn't use it anyway until fiscal 24.
We don't have the staff capacity to do it right now unless we get council to reprioritize our infrastructure plan projects.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. Vice Chair?
Oh, thank you both. That so it's very helpful to hear all that information. And I'll just chime in with my colleagues and emphasize how important this is. Really, especially if we don't have any assurance of Stanford's plans regarding that property. Maybe they can find another place to put it that's in a less central portion on the land, though. I don't know if that's been discussed, but I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Commissioner Heckman?
This has been really helpful to hear both from Fire and Public Works and to fill this out. It is a thorny problem. And incidentally, Chair, we're spending a lot of time on this, but just so you know, I really don't have any comments on the last 7. So maybe, and if some of my commissioners are the same, maybe those will move pretty quickly. But on this one, this is important, and I'm glad we're spending the time on it. A thought occurred to me, and actually I thought at one point that this is where Commissioner Chang was going to go. That station, that training facility on the Stanford campus is also, in addition to the training, it's also a fire station. Is that right, Chief?
That is correct.
Okay, and that fire station provides fire protection to the Stanford campus. And because Stanford's fire department merged into ours in the 70s, we are the fire protection. And so with that fact, I was wondering if we can leverage their need for us to bring them to the table to share in the funding necessary to keep this training facility, to make this training facility safe and keep it that way until we can build our new facility. It's probably something you've explored, and I'm being introduced to this today, but I'm curious as to what, if any, dialogue has happened. If you need help from the city council to put pressure in that direction, what can we do for the short-term solution until you can get a new facility built?
Go ahead and address that if you like.
Okay, sorry, I was making sure that was directed towards me. In the short term, our plan is to continue to do what we're doing. As I said, just be able to attain the container through the purchasing process, and the timing of it was very appreciative. And again, we're using it to the best of our ability. But the only plan we have right now is to continue to use the tower to the best of our ability to make sure that they're getting the training and staying safe. And maybe something else can come up where we can supplement what we have available at the tower. So that's the plan. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot more than that at this time where we can address the training that we desire to have. Again, something that reflects the disciplines in fire that have changed over the course of decades from the 70s. Kylie, did you like to speak on this?
Sure. Good evening, Kylie, if possible. Good evening, Kylie Nose, Administrative Services Director and Interim Assistant City Manager. Just wanted to provide a little bit of color on this, as it is a complex relationship that we have with Stanford regarding fire services. So we do have an agreement, frankly, a lengthy agreement with Stanford on the cost of delivering fire services and the costs that they help contribute to, as they obviously are a beneficiary of those services. Included in that is a cost share of capital improvements. So to the extent that we are making capital improvements, whether it be directly on Station 6 or something that's part of the fire infrastructure in whole, they will pay their pro rata share of those. And that's already determined based on that contractual agreement. So as we do make investments, as we reconcile that agreement, we do work with Stanford on their fair share of those costs based on those terms. Obviously, as Chief Blackshire has noted, we have this interim solution with this container plus the existing tower, but obviously as Stanford potentially likely has other plans and we will need a new facility, that there will come a time that we need to move it. And so what staff's really doing is raising this, obviously, so that we can move forward with the long-term sustainable plan for a facility that meets the current day needs of the fire department and all the services that they afford, acknowledging this transition that Stanford's going through on their campus as well. So I think the feedback from the commission is heard, and I think staff shares the same prioritization of we need to make sure that we have a facility that can support these. And so we're moving through the steps, since it's not going to be, as Assistant Director Boyd said, we can't just stand it up somewhere. There are going to be impacts, since it is a 3-story, relatively perhaps not always architecturally attractive facility. And so needing to move through those processes, we're getting that started, basically. So I just wanted to acknowledge we do have relationships with Stanford. We do have contract agreement, and we'll be working with them on that as per those contract terms. Thanks.
Any other comments on this one? Okay, I guess there are none. So we can pick this up at the end if we like. The next one is Bull Park Pathway repaving and repair. 1.2 miles. Commissioner Templeton?
Thank you. I live in Barron Park and we use this all the time and see how often and how well loved it is and well used it is. And it is definitely in desperate need of repair. So I'm really excited to see that on here.
Okay, others? Commissioner, Vice Chair Suma?
Thank you. Yes, it is in need of repair, but I noticed that this one is probably going to be exempt from CEQA, but I'm sure that everyone would agree it's a sensitive park location near creek, and that it should. I just wanted to make the point that this should be done with a mind to being as the least disruptive to the environment there as it's being done. So maybe it doesn't need CEQA, but the appropriate, considerations that it's in a park that's somewhat naturalized, it has a creek in it and those sorts of things.
Yes, we do appreciate where it is, and we'll be coordinating this project with, again, sorry, I didn't say my name, Holly Boyd, Assistant Director of Public Works. So Public Works will be working on this project with Community Services, as well as the Office of Transportation during the engagement process and community meetings to identify the scope and everything, so.
Yeah, I think especially in remembering the recent toxic spill in the creek there, I think that the neighbors were very sensitive about that. And I think it has to be paved because it's primarily a bike path, but maybe look into the best materials, perhaps even permeable paving, all those sorts of things, which I'm sure staff is going to do anyway.
Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Rectal?
Yeah, I agree that this is really important. My only hesitation is when I look at the values, it's going to be $1.4 million. That seems like a lot for paving a bike path. Is there some major repair that has to go on?
Well, we haven't done a lot of investigative work. We've used to come up with that cost estimate. There's some design costs in there, as we will be, given the size, we're gonna, put in some kind of green element, whether it be permeable paving or some kind of feature like that. And we used recent bid items for bid prices that we've received for similar projects to come up with that. But really it's a 1.2 mile, it's quite a distance. It does include design and construction contingency. So.
Okay, so that value is typical. It's not like that there's some major foundation that has to be repaired.
No, and it does not include work on I think there's 2 bridges out there. Work on those bridges are being done through a separate project. So it doesn't include actually any work on those bridges.
Okay. And what is our best practices for these? You mentioned green permeable pavement. Is that a standard or is that optional?
No, it's not a standard yet. However, we've been trying to implement when we do large projects like this, pathway projects or projects in parks, just our general capital projects, we try and implement as many green features as we can to help improve runoff. I'm thinking permeable pavement might be a good thing here because it's already in a parkland. So, runoff is already happening to the natural environment on the side. So that's what, but it's something that we're trying to include as part of our, Karen's probably going to help me out, our green ordinance. I'm forgetting the thing.
Sustainability.
Yes.
Our green stormwater infrastructure, Karen North, and Public Works Director, Environmental Services. So Holly's yin to her yang. So when she does a capital project, we try and figure out how do we complement it and put in some green stormwater infrastructure, which is actually now required with our regional municipal stormwater permit. And the new ones, actually, the hearing was today. So we're going to have more new fund requirements for GSI, which is the shorthand version of green stormwater infrastructure. So, and parks are an excellent way where we can complement. So if we are doing some kind of upgrade into a park facility, we'll figure out how to incorporate, how to slow the flow of water, treat that water, potentially, and maybe in the future, put in some cisterns and other things like that. But that's a bigger, broader discussion. But we are trying to figure out how to, especially with the drought, reuse and repurpose this water if we can and capture it.
Where's the starting and stopping points for this?
So let's see. So this, well, I start Arastradero Foothill Expressway over there is one starting point, and then it goes all the way over to Stanford Research Park over by Hanover.
Oh, that's the whole path.
It's the whole thing, yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes. I was thinking that it was just the short little piece that goes from Hanover over to the park, but it's all the way through the park, all the way to Gunn.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments on this one? Okay, we'll move on to the next one, which is the Roth building, phase 1. What's
Chair,
that? What?
EV infrastructure first.
Oh, sorry. The electric charger infrastructure installation is the next item. Thanks for the correction. Commissioner Templeton?
Yes, I wanted to say, first of all, I'm really glad to see that we're moving towards more EVs on our fleet and that we'll build the infrastructure to support them. I would also just plant the seed that, because it says in here, these are primarily intended for our fleet. If there are known hours when it won't be in use, if you can incorporate making those publicly available, I think you'd get a lot more use out of it. As a counter example, at my children's local school, they have a bunch of, I want to say 10 or 12 EV chargers that are not in use on the when school is out, and only the teachers are allowed to use it. So it's kind of wasted. It'd be nice to be able to have it, preferred for city vehicles and then available for others if they want to use it in the off hours. But I think this is a great project.
Others, Commissioner Rectal?
That's a ghost hand, but I'll say, yeah, this is a good project. We have an EV and finding charging stations sometimes is a challenge. So the more the merrier.
Okay, others on this one? Nope. Okay, then we'll move on to the Roth building. Phase 1. Hands for that. Vice Chair Zuma.
Thank you. So I think I'll refer to the big binder here. I have some clarifications I wanted to ask staff about this project. It's just phase one, and in looking on the right side on binder page 115, the funding sources schedule. I was trying to figure out what capital improvement fund meant, where that 5,600,000 comes from, and revenue from other agencies. So I think what the former is, the 5,600,000, is the TDRs that are incorporated as a part of this project. And I'm not sure about the other agencies. And I understand the following four are all designated funds that this project, already existing funds that this project will be utilizing because it qualified for them. So, and that the total at 11 million is not 11 million out of the general fund or anything like that for the public, that these funds were designated for this project through historic and seismic updates and TDRs and other existing city funds. Because when I looked at it the first time, I said, how could, how could this be? I was just trying to understand it. So am I thinking about it the right way, I guess is the question.
Thank you for the question, Paul Harper with the Office of Management and Budget. I'll take that question. You are correct. The 5.6 million is the TDR funding that has been reserved essentially in the capital improvement fund for improvements to this building. The revenue from other agencies is a grant from the County of Santa Clara to repair, I believe, the roof and some of the frescoes that are on the wall. Yeah, and then the other funding, the funding plan for this project was essentially discussed with council as part of the fiscal year 2022 budget process. This project was just not set up at that point in time, so it's coming back this year to be set up based on discussions that happened last year. And most of the other funding sources from the impact fee funds will still need to be approved in terms of the final plan that comes forward. But this is staff's estimate based on the initial plans that we've seen, but those will need to be approved once the final plans are done to ensure that the space that's been designated aligns with those impact fee funds.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And I'm happy to see this project coming up and moving forward. I just did want to clarify that for the public, that it's not like the city is taking $11 million and putting it here. It's designated funds. Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Rectal.
Yeah, I'm confused about the TDRs. Can you just give me a TDR 101? Are these TDRs that already have been sold, or are they going to be sold?
They have already been sold.
Okay. Were they sold a few years ago? Is this the Sea Scout TDRs, or is this? Was this recent?
So the Sea Scout ones were part of this. They were transitioned to this project a few years ago. There was a council action to shift those as part of this. Kylie, I'm not sure if you have more information on when the other ones were sold.
Sure, it's been in the teens. It's been a few years since they've been sold. I want to say they were sold probably somewhere around 2015, 2016. And once the proceeds from that sale were received, staff's just been reserving it pending the continued partnership with the museum and the lease agreement and option agreement. So the TDRs, I believe, were sold both for the Sea Scout building as well as the Roth facility at 300 Homer itself.
Okay, so private people bought these TDRs, and
That's
that
correct.
allows, and they just have them sitting on the shelf right now. And eventually they'll come and they'll do a project and they'll be able to increase the density. Is that how it works?
Yes.
Okay. And have any of them been used, or are they all sitting on the shelf?
That I don't have the information on.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Oh, one more question. So how does it work when someone wants to use a TDR? Sometimes, you know, you have height limits and other things like that. They still are constrained by all the design constraints, correct?
Correct. And I suspect Assistant Director Tanner can help on the more particulars from a process perspective on this. But yes, just because someone has development rights doesn't mean that they have the ability to circumvent our existing code structures.
I can add more detail if you're interested. I will say my experience with the TDR program is limited. I don't know if Ms. Campbell has more detail, but it does allow for, and it also depends on how the TDRs are being applied, what product they're being applied to, how they might change the building's form. But we can certainly provide more detail if the commission's interested.
Claire, do you have a quick answer, or do you want to take it offline?
Yeah, we can probably take it. It's a little bit complicated, I would definitely say, but I think generally Kylie was right on point that when you get your TDRs there, you still need to comply with other development regulations. But TDRs has always been a little bit of a complicated project to do. So certainly I can spend some time with you if you'd like to talk through it a little bit more.
And these TDRs can be used for any purpose, or is it, for example, office versus residential versus retail?
It's not associated specifically with a land use. It's just associated with the building, the development of the building. Okay. And it's definitely not for, it's not meant for residential purposes. It's definitely non-residential development.
Okay, interesting. And if it adds density, that extra density, that extra square footage still, it doesn't do anything with the office cap, right? If you wanted to use this to add office, does that extra space count toward the office cap?
I believe that it does, but I'd have to double check.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments on this one? Okay. Next up is California Avenue Streetscape update. Commissioner comments on that one. Conceptual design and community engagement to develop options for expanding the spaces there. Nobody? Okay. Oh, Commissioner Rupivar.
I just had a quick question. We received a survey. Does this relate to the survey that everybody in Palo Alto received about what to do with Cal Ave?
This is the University Avenue Streetscape project, I believe. So.
Oh, it's the, sorry.
This is,
no, it says Cal Ave.
Sorry.
This is Cal Ave.
This does not, I mean, it relates to the survey in terms of, you know, so the council is given direction to have staff return with an item next Monday to keep the streets closed for 2 years while there is a study which would be this study to think about the future of California Avenue and to look at permanent closures and explore that process. Council does not need to keep the streets closed to do that. And so through the budget process, they would, if they, you know, adopt this project in the CIP, and that would allocate the budget to have that program take place in that exploration. So it relates to it, but it's not necessarily, you know, you could have the streets open up and still do a study about, you know, closing them permanently.
Got it. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to the East Meadow Circle connection to Adobe Creek Pump Station. Any comments on that? Commissioner Heckman?
Sorry, just one very minor one. Staff, if you wouldn't mind, when this goes to council, insert the word stormwater after circle, sort of East Meadow Circle stormwater connection. There are, pump stations for stormwater, for freshwater, and for sewer. And this one actually doesn't say what it is until the last sentence of the first paragraph. But before you get there, you read that the existing line is discharging into Barron Creek. And so that made me a little nervous until I got to the end of the paragraph. So we can help the council members avoid that discomfort by just adding stormwater. Thanks.
Commissioner Rectal.
Yeah, my question was, how critical is this? Is this a nice to have, or is this something that absolutely has to be done?
Good evening. Again, this is Holly Boyd, Assistant Director of Public Works. So this is actually one of the identified 13 projects that went as a storm drain ballot measure, I think in 2017. And it was approved. So this is one of the highest priorities in the cities, along with its 12 other companions. So this is actually just the next highest priority one in the plan that is being added to the capital budget for fiscal year 2026.
Okay, so we're constrained to do this.
Yes, per the ballot measure, the residents voted to do these projects.
Okay, and just curious, what would happen if we didn't do this from an engineering standpoint? Is it just a flooding risk, or what?
Yeah, it will continue to be susceptible to flooding and high flow and high, large rain events, which we haven't had a lot of, but they are, can be intense at times. And it's actually part of a connection to a previous project that was already approved, the East Meadow Drive system. So a lot of these projects connect together. So we do one and then we do the next one and then we do the next one. So if we don't do this project and we do the other one, we'll just be pushing any flooding issues further along.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Rupabar.
Yeah, I had a similar question, whether this was necessary, given, we don't have, we're in a drought. So another question is, does this line take water from Barron Creek that overflows and puts it into Adobe Creek, or vice versa? Or is it Adobe Creek into Barron Creek? I was looking at it on a map and trying to figure it out.
I believe it's Barron into Adobe.
Barron into Adobe. Okay. Okay. And then we have to do it because it seems a bit unnecessary, but we have to do it per the ballot.
Yes, I mean, the ballot measure recommends these projects to help alleviate flooding, even though flooding might not occur in all over. These are areas that have been identified that flood even with a simple, a small storm. So a lot of these are to address kind of small storm spot area issues, as well as provide maintenance upgrades for pipes that are at their end of life.
Thank you.
Commissioner Templeton.
Thank you. I just wanted to underscore what Ms. Boyd said, that this is absolutely necessary for Palo Alto. I had the pleasure of attending a lecture on the history of flooding and flood control in Palo Alto a few years ago. And there's a whole complex network of undergrounded tunnels and work that has been done to prevent flooding that used to occur all the time. And especially at this Bull Park, Barron, Adobe area, there's a ton of flooding potential that's absolutely necessary.
Okay, any other comments? If not, we'll go to the scheduled vehicle and equipment replacement. Commissioner Rectal.
One thing I noticed about this is that the primary comp plan element is natural environment, which doesn't seem appropriate. I mean, they say that they will try to do electric cars, but if you look at the list of the vehicles that are in the fleet, almost all of them are trucks and things like that, which likely would not be electric vehicles. So that seems something that we should fix, because I don't think that's appropriate. But from the standpoint of whether the project is good, it seems appropriate to keep the fleet up to date. But
The reason why it is in natural environment is because of the air quality. The older the vehicles are, it affects the air quality in their emissions. So that's why newer vehicles would be something which everybody would desire, and that's the reason we put it in air quality.
But is that the primary reason we're buying new vehicles, or is it primarily just because the vehicles are old and we want more reliable vehicles?
I can't say whether the reason why they're buying that, but as an impact, that's
I think certainly we could say that there are co-benefits. So even if we need to replace vehicles because they're needed to be renewed, it can also provide the co-benefits to the environment.
Oh yeah, certainly. If they're at the end of life, then it makes sense. Then I would agree that. But if you're, anyway, you understand my point.
Is it the intent? Is it the intent with these vehicles to go all electric now, or are some impossible to get that way, trucks or whatever?
So I can answer the last two questions. This is Mike Wong, the Interim Assistant Director for Public Works, Public Services. The vehicle replacement is scheduled because the vehicles are at the end of their typical useful life. And we're trying to convert to EV vehicles when possible. But as you mentioned, the availability of EV vehicles is really scarce right now. The technology hasn't brought the vehicles forward yet. Plus, with material shortages and delivery issues, we can't even get gas-powered vehicles right now. But we're looking at when we can, when EV vehicles are available, particularly heavy-duty trucks. As they slowly become available with technology, we're looking to convert when we can.
Okay, thank you. Other questions on this one? Okay, seeing none. The next one up is the Joint Intercepting Sewer Rehab, Phase 1. Sewer trunk line. Comments or questions? Vice Chair Zuma.
Thank you. This one, like the two previous, just seem to be annual assessments of improvements needed. And I do think the preference for electric vehicles has been made clear. Their availability is not as clear, but this just seems, in the absence of knowing anything about sewers, really, this just seems like one of those normal maintenance and improvement things that we need to do. And a number of these 12 were like that. So that's the only comment I can offer right now.
This is Karen North, Assistant Public Works Director, Environmental Services Division. I just want to reassure all of you that this is something that's actually imperative that we do work on. And that's why it's a last minute capital project, because we did an assessment on the 72-inch line sewer and it is deteriorating quickly. So we're trying to get this fixed as soon as possible. This is the fun of running and operating a regional wastewater treatment plant. There's always things that need to be fixed. And this one, the sewer line was from the 1970s, and we can see the corroding inside of it. So there'll be lots of projects at the wastewater treatment plant because we are basically rebuilding the entire facility.
Thank you for this.
Yeah, if you ever want to come tour the sewage treatment plant, we would be happy to give you guys a tour so you get a more sense of, what's in your backyard.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great offer. Thank you very much. And thank you for clarifying.
Absolutely.
Anything else on any of these that someone forgot to ask on earlier ones, or? If not, then we would go back to the beginning and address the requested motion, recommending to council the proposal of the CIPs and that they're consistent with the comp plan 2030 policies and programs. Commissioner Heckman.
Can we break out at least the fire training facilities replacement item from a bulk motion and handle that separately?
But we could, in my view, we don't need to. We can just add that to this, and that can be included in the chair's letter to the council. Assistant Director Tanner agrees.
However, the commission would like to structure the motion. It could be a motion to approve, find the CIPs in compliance and recommend the council expedite the CIP related to the fire. It could be two motions if the commission wishes, or one motion with two parts.
Yeah, I had actually drafted some language about that in the interim here and say that, plus in addition, we recommend that council consider adjusting the infrastructure priorities to include in 2023 the $70,000 CIP feasibility study for the fire training facility replacement. 24,000.
So I like that language. I had drafted something similar, but yours is perfect. So I'd be supportive of that. I did have one other piece that I wanted to tag in, if I can read that.
So just to review where we are. So you're moving the staff motion, including what I just suggested, and now you're going to add a third one. That's fine.
Well, I haven't made a motion yet, and I really wanted to put this on the table for a little bit of discussion, which can be done before or after the motion, but I was thinking before the motion, just put it out there. So you've provided one add-on, which I'm supportive of. The other add-on that I am thinking of is that the council consider expanding the budget for this program to include funding for adequate temporary training facilities for fire personnel until our new training facility is completed.
Okay, so you haven't made a motion yet. So if anyone wants,
so that's just a concept that I'm curious about other commissioner feedback on whether there's general support to include that in the motion or not.
Okay, Commissioner Rectal.
I had another thing outside of that. To answer Bart's question, I would support that also. But when I look at the other list, these are just new projects that we're approving. When I look at the ones that we've already approved, one really stands out to me, and that's funding this year, $5.7 million for a garage downtown. And that would be in conflict with the housing element of wanting to put housing above the garages. So I would encourage that the staff or the council either delay that for a year or put that money towards design of a garage and housing. I don't think we want to spend money on design of a pure garage. I think that likely would be wasted.
If I may, I don't know if Ms. Nozay is still with us. I believe council did give us direction to explore a garage and affordable housing. So that may connect with that. I'm not sure if that CIP is aligned. Ms. Nozay, see some nodding.
Yes, so right now that's really a placeholder while staff works through the direction that Assistant Director Tanner just noted. So staff is working on an RFI that will look at use of public, what did we say? I think we said public surface lots in the downtown core with a preference for affordable housing. And so we won't be making progress on any investments in terms of a downtown garage until that's completed.
Okay, very good. That makes me very happy. Okay.
Okay, back to any motions. I mean, I'd be, oh, sorry, Commissioner Chang just came on. Go ahead.
Just to say that I too would be supportive of what Commissioner Heckman suggested, both the piece that Chair Lowing suggested as well as what Commissioner Heckman suggested.
All right, we've had a number of comments. You want to just go ahead and formalize that as a motion? The original staff motion plus your two adds, which I think we've heard, but we can hear it again if you like, if everyone likes, and then we can chat about it.
Sure. Let me.
You want to do that?
I'm going to start the motion, but I want you to read your language for that first element because that was stated very well. So I will move the staff recommendation that the PTC recommend to the City Council that the proposed 2023-2027 capital improvement projects listed in attachment B are consistent with the Comprehensive Plan 2030 policies and programs with the following two modifications to CIP FD 24,000, the fire training facility replacement program.
And the first one is to have council consider adjusting the infrastructure priorities to include in 2023 the $70,000 CIP for a feasibility study for this CIP.
And the second is to have council consider expanding the budget for this CIP to include funding for adequate temporary training facilities for fire personnel until our new training facility is completed.
So that's the motion, and I will second.
Oh,
Discussion from either further discussion from the maker or?
No, thank you.
Okay. And any others? Are there any other additions that folks would like to put in here in addition to the one on fire? If not, seeing none, we can go to a roll call vote.
Commissioner Heckman,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Chair Lowing,
Yes.
Commissioner Rekdal,
Yes.
Commissioner Rupperber,
Yes.
Vice Chair Suma,
yes.
Commissioner Templeton.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Excellent. Good work, good questions, and really a big thanks to staff for all the negotiating you did to get here on the CIPs and coming to our meeting to help us out. Appreciate that to all of you.
I just want to second the thanks to all the departments who've joined. I know it's a group effort, so we thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you, everyone.
And for the staff report. Excellent. Commissioner Chang.
I just had, thank you to the staff for the staff report. I just one favor to ask for the future. It would be real, I think that last year when I looked at this, it could be that my memory is not quite correct, but I thought that last year when we looked at this item, the table that was included in the packet also included the years for which the expenditure was budgeted for, as well as the amounts. And if in the future, when this is brought to us, if those two pieces of information could be added to the table so that we don't have to cross-reference the giant binder, that would be super helpful. But thank you so much for a really great packet.
And that's having the year that the budget is allocated? I'm sorry, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, so the packet has the 12 items and a description of the items.
Right.
But what it doesn't have is the amount
The
for
amount,
that
okay.
item, as well as the years for which the amount is budgeted for.
In the future, if it's
Yeah,
not, if
so-
it's not the upcoming year, it's, 2025 or what. have
Correct.
you.
So it'd be
Yeah.
great if we had, item number one is $350,000 budgeted for 2026 or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, that
Thank
makes
you.
sense. Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the next item is the approval of minutes. And this is draft verbatim meeting minutes for April 20th of 22. Commissioner Heckman.
I'll move approval of the April 20th, 22 draft verbatim meeting minutes as revised.
Second,
That was Vice Chair Suma, second. Okay, any comments, questions? If not, we can do a roll call vote.
Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner Heckman,
Yes.
Chair Lowing,
Yes.
Commissioner Rekdal,
Yes.
Commissioner Rupperber.
Abstain.
Did you say abstain?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, sorry. Vice Chair Suma,
yes.
Commissioner Templeton.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we move on to committee items. I don't think there are any older committees, right? But I want to bring up the need for a new committee in the connection of the housing element and in connection with reviewing the housing element, which is going to come in our scheduled now to come in our June meetings of July 8th and 29th. Thinking we will need 2 meetings. The second meeting, the 29th, might have other agenda items. So I've been discussing this with Director Late, as well as the sort of co-chairs of the staff co-chairs of Claire Campbell and Tim Long, and with the co-chairs, myself and Cheryl Klein of the housing element, because what has occurred is that the HCD has changed some of their deadlines for when we have to get stuff in. And in spite of having had an extra meeting on the housing element working group, the working group didn't get to the finish line on programs. And programs are really the specifics that HCD is looking at to ultimately approve the housing element. And it's critical that we get those right. So the two things that, I think everyone agrees from, Director Late and the housing element group and the co-chairs and so on, is that the state of the document right now is such that we need more specificity on the programs that are listed in there. There's some things that have just too much general direction, like investigate or take a look at, or maybe. I'm exaggerating for emphasis, but we have to get really specific on what we're going to accomplish to get past the rules of HCD. And also, we just didn't quite get done. So there are more programs that need to be done in addition to the ones that staff brought to us. And then we added some from the HEWG to the staff, and we are where we are. And the plan now is to basically hand the baton to PTC as is. And so in discussions with Director Late, he would like an ad hoc group here to work on that, basically as initially as an extension of the housing element working group, but crucially for the 7 of us to really prepare by having a couple of offsite meetings and work more with staff input on new programs and more specificity in existing programs. Estimated maybe a couple soon before June, and then maybe one in between those two. So that's the plan. And the idea is that the 3 people for this committee need to work, together arm in arm to kind of simplify it for us and the public and to sort of get it right. But as with all ad hoc committees, there's no vote at the ad hoc, and the ad hoc comes back and presents to us, the entire commission, here's what's going on. Here's 2 options or 3 options for this particular kind of program. And we debate it just like we debate anything else. And we come up with, a vote of 7 commissioners. So just to reassure everyone, including the public, that, none of that's going to happen at the ad hoc, but the value add there is huge to get it in a state that's ready for us, for the 7 of us to debate after the 3 debate. So after discussion and thought and so on, the ad hoc is going to be Keith, Commissioner Reckdahl, who has a year and a half experience already with the housing element working group, and has been very involved in the program aspect of that, and will be excellent continuity with that group in any context when first the ad hoc, and then we bring up, well, what was going on here? Like, let's say, parking and housing on top of city parking lots. He can probably tell you what the straw vote was from the committee, because there's that much of detailed knowledge of it. So I think that's crucial. And then I've asked Commissioner Templeton to join. Her passion around housing for years has been, illustrative of kind of where we need to go with this. So, and then I've also asked Commissioner Chang. So that will be the group. It has to be limited to a minority, which is 3. And that means the other 4 of us, can't really interact with the ad hoc at all until they present to the full group. So that's where we are on that. And I really value Tim and Claire's input on this and Director Late's in trying to say, we're behind. And the working group is sad that they aren't finished, but, hopeful that it's in good hands coming here. So we're getting it earlier in an estate that was different than what was expected. But, this will be one of the ways to kind of bridge the gap. Commissioner Heckman.
Thank you, Chair Lowing. A little bit of clarification to help me understand. So earlier this year, at a couple of PTC meetings, we went through the site selection process that the working group had, and I think it's the same working group, had yielded. We made our recommendations to council and council has acted. I'm trying to understand the nature of what the ad hoc committee will do and then what's going to be coming to the PTC, I think you said on June 8th and 29th. Are these things that are part of that site selection recommendation to the HCD, or are the things that are going to be coming to us in June deficiencies in our housing element that have been identified that are apart from wherever the site selection is?
Thanks for the question. It has nothing to do with site selection. That's a done deal. This is the program phase, and it is not relative to any deficiency in the housing plan. It's what do we need to do relative to the new HCD regulations, which are much more rigorous this year than in the last cycle. The point is to have enough programs in there, number one, that it has credibility with HCD, so we get our plan approved. But number two, so that those programs create actual housing, not just a document. So it's the program phase of the housing element working group. And basically what should be coming to the PTC or close to, it should be close to what would have been coming from the housing element working group had they been able to finish. And then we start our job as commissioners reviewing that recommendation to us, just like we did with the site selection. And we made changes and then we recommended something to council.
So if I can follow up then, so are the programs that we're going to be dealing with the programs that are designed to make the housing units that we've identified in the site selection process a possible reality?
That's correct.
Okay, so it is directly linked that way.
Correct.
All right, and so
so to put it a different way, we have about 7,000 housing units in the recommendations on sites. And this is what HCC, that's an interesting goal, folks. Now, let me see how you're going to get there.
Okay.
And that there's teeth in the comb to get it done.
All right. So
perhaps just even to put a further point on that, not only how are you going to realize the housing that you prescribe, but how are you going to achieve other goals that the state has indicated they want us to achieve, like affirmatively furthering fair housing, which is not maybe just about the housing unit itself, but where it's located and other aspects of the housing, as well as perhaps our tenant protection goals or other goals related to the housing element. And Commission may or may not be aware, Southern California is a bit ahead of us in the housing element review cycle. Of the almost 200 jurisdictions in Southern California, only 6 housing elements have been deemed compliant. All the others have been sent back. And so the programs is a place that HCD is really taking a strong look at. So we need to make sure that they are not just aspirational, but they're really achievable policy and programs that we're outlining that we are going to actually work on in the next 8 years. And I think that's a little bit of a departure from previous housing element cycles where it's some ways like the comp plan, where it's somewhat aspirational and you're kind of indicating the direction you want to go, and HCD wants to see a bit more teeth to what we're proposing this time around.
Okay, and then if I can ask a couple more questions.
Yeah, I just want to give Commissioner Rectal a chance to comment because he's been intimately involved in this, but it doesn't mean you have to stop now.
Commissioner Rectal, you want to chime in?
Yeah, I mean, this is very important just because well, 2 things. One is we want to make the housing real, but also HCD is being very picky. And so we have to scrub this. And one of the problems is that when you have something like the housing element work group, they don't have authority to do this. They're recommending things to council. So a lot of it was like, consider doing this or consider doing that. And that apparently does not hold water. So there's a lot of work to do to firm things up.
Okay, so the culmination of this process is the creation of these programs that we then have to submit to the HCD.
Yes, and procedurally what would happen is the PTC like site selection would recommend that the council, have these be the programs and policies in the housing element.
Right.
And then that would be combined with the site selection work you already did to be part of council's approval process.
And when's the deadline to deliver that package of sites and programs to the HCD?
I believe that, so that there's the deadline and then there's when we're trying to achieve it. I believe that we are aiming to go through 2 review periods with HCD. One will be this year in 2022, and then other would be in February of next year. And we would hope that, they deem us compliant. It's the deadline for our region, I believe, is May or June of 2023 to have submitted your housing element.
Okay. All right. So when we went through the site selection process, I'm wondering if this is an example of the kind of program that we're going to be looking at. I remember there was a letter, and I don't remember what group it came from, talking about where you, and I may not remember this exactly right, but where you are designating more than half of your below market housing on developed sites. You have to, it's not enough just to say it could go there. You have sort of, I don't know if it's findings or a program to show why it's somewhat more likely that'll actually come to fruition. So is that an example of the kind of program that we're going to try to be forwarding as part of this package?
I think it could be, I think with that specific critique or advisement from that, I think it might have been YIMBY law, but don't quote me on that. I think what they were trying to get at is, and what you have to show to the state is that there's evidence from other similar development to say it's reasonable to expect this could be affordable housing. Like we have other sites that have developed in such a manner, and so we can assume that might occur again in the future. I think for programs, and I will be remiss because I have not been intimately involved with the team and they've all logged off thus far. I think that an example, that I am more familiar with is we had council assign us quite a good package of tenant protection work that we want to work on. And so we wouldn't just say, oh, pursue policies for protecting tenants. We would say specifically, we want to pursue this specific policy, which, helps tenants maintain their housing in this way. And so we just want to get it more specific. I don't know, Chair Long, if that kind of aligns with your understanding.
It's sort of, we have to get to a factual basis of what's going to happen as opposed to some good ideas that we're going to look at. And some of them are as simple as the Housing Element Working Group recommended going through with the Palmer fix, which is inclusionary for purchases as well as rentals. And there's some consideration to try to get up from 15% as we tried in this body on the rentals, because 57% are need to be affordable. So it's that level of specificity that's going to have believability, both for HCD and for ourselves, that we're going to be able to build it because we have those kind of programs there. And some of it is zoning, but in that case, we can just basically say, this needs to be zoned. We don't have to have it zoned next week. It's just, the promise that it's going to get rezoned and the commitment from the council as this thing goes to HCD.
Okay. All right. I do have another question, but I've been using the floor for quite a while, and I see the vice chair's hand up. So why don't I yield and we'll come back to my question.
Vice Chair Suma.
Thank you. And I was just gonna, I was to Commissioner Heckman's question about the reality of those properties changing their use. I remember that staff had a pretty nice way. It was, and Keith or Ed might know this, but it was of determining that, and it was basically the age of the building and the value of the property versus the value of the structure, and one other thing that I can't remember. So I was just gonna, I can't remember the third thing. Maybe you do, Keith.
That was in the site selection.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember the third one either. Maybe Commissioner Rectal does, but yeah, they had a pretty mathematical formula on that. But they still have to go around and do a sampling of those people. You can't just assume that X% of them are going to. And that gets a little tough, because if there's 5,000 sites, do you go and get a notarized statement from 4,000 of them? I mean, there's some pretty tricky things here that every city is facing relative to the requirements. So. Do you want to comment again? Go ahead.
Yeah, just my last question is really trying to understand the product that we're going to get from the the ad hoc. So is this we've asked 3 of my fellow commissioners to form this, and so are they going to, because I heard you say that they're not voting on anything, so they're going to collaborate and try to organize their thoughts on these different programs and present us with the options that any of them have come up with.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, and the current document is public on the Housing Element Working Group site. And you'll see, I mean, I don't want to call what percentage of it is completed, but you'll see all the specific programs that are there, which ones are consistent with state law, which ones are specific to us, and all that. So you'll see the state of it right now, and the group will work with staff to see how many more we need and which ones that are there that need some tweaking. And absolutely, I mean, let's take this one, which did have some controversy, even though council has already voted to go do it, which was building housing on city parking lots. And this house selection, I think, had 4 to 6 sites that over the 10 years could be used in that way. And there are constraints about having to, the assumption being that you have to maintain at least as much parking and so on. The programs could be written in, 2 or 3 different ways that comes back from the ad hoc, and we could all have a discussion about that to make that happen. And then eventually we would take a vote on that program. Yeah.
Okay. So
that's out in the public right now. You can see exactly where it is. It's just not quite finished. So what, as I say, what probably is going to come back from the ad hoc is pretty much would have come back from the Housing Element Working Group, except that we have planning commissioners that are, more up the learning curve on, what's likely. So it's, no offense to my colleagues on the working group who are phenomenal, but there's just more experience around the table on that. So, and it's better than having 7 of us do it, right from the start. So.
All right, then that being so, I'm glad we're getting underway with this, and I want to thank Commissioners Rectal, Chang, and Templeton for stepping up. This is a fair amount of work to be doing in the next month. So thank you.
Any other comments on that? No? Okay. Other questions, comments, announcements, and of course, future agenda items.
I'm happy to share some of the upcoming council meetings, as well as talk about future agenda items for the commission. On May 16th, we have objective standards. I was reading that, for objective is October. Objective standards at city councils, that's next Monday. And that was where PTC did have some role. Again, ARB did a lot of the heavy lifting on the objective standards piece. May 23rd is Castellea. It is the only action item that evening. So plan to be here for a robust discussion in Castellea. And then June 1st, council will be considering the work plan for ARB, HRB, and PTC, along with the downtown in lieu parking ban, which you all recommended to be extended for 3 years. So that will be on June 1st. And then at our next meeting here, we'll be looking at a housing project. And I don't know, it's the map related to the housing project on West Bayshore. And we were planning to bring it to you all later this month, the ADUs, but the Bayshore project just is a little more timely and needs to get addressed. And so that will be coming to you at the end of this month. And I'm available for any questions if there are already about future agenda items.
Did you say that the parking program update is still coming?
Yes, and the parking program update. Sorry about that.
Right. So those 2 items on May 25 are still planned to see both of those on May 25th. Other questions? Okay, any other comments or anything? I loved the parade. That's the comment I want to make. That was really fun. It was just fun to see the community all out and people outside and talking and laughing and all that compared to doing everything on Zoom, which you can't do a parade on Zoom. Just, great camaraderie and short enough so that we weren't exhausted, and quite a crowd at the end at the park too, with some music and things for kids to do. So it was really fun.
I think PTC did win the battle of the commissions, though.
I think so.
You mean that we had a higher attendance?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did. It was great.
Well, the other commissions didn't know they were competing, but we'll still take the win.
Should be implied.
Commissioner Chang?
So I remember us discussing that we're going to recess, it's already in the calendar. We decided that we're going to have a recess June 27th. And then there was some noodling and back and forth about whether we wanted to make that 2 weeks or not. I don't have an opinion as to whether we have an official recess for 2 weeks or not, but did want to let the rest of the commission know that I'm going to be gone on August 10th, which is adjacent to the July 27th meeting. In case anybody else wants to schedule themselves away for that that week.
Wait, that's a conspiracy.
All right, that's all.
I am penciled in for that as well, but it's not final yet.
Just as long as you two didn't talk before the meeting, I'm okay with that. Okay, anything else?
If commissioners can just keep us abreast of their planned absences, we'll just take that into consideration and make sure we have a quorum.
Okay, we'll see you at the next meeting and we stand adjourned. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night to those on Zoom.